Caitlin Collins thought she had Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett trapped on live CNN. With a sly, confident lean toward her guest, the veteran anchor had that familiar glint in her eye, the kind that says, asterisk, I'm about to end your career in real time. Asterisk, but within minutes. The tables turned so hard that Collins was left frozen, eyes darting, while nearly 10 seconds of awkward silence filled the air. Viewers could feel it. The hunter had just become the hunted. And what Crockett let out next not only derailed the interview, it redefined the rules of political warfare. But hey, race the thing asterisk, this wasn't a blow-up. This was a masterclass in turning the tables when the media comes after you. And let me tell you, the way it went down is something you'll want to watch right through to the end. So before we get into it, give that a like and subscribe, because the instant you see what Crockett did, you'll know why this interview went instantly legendary. The tension in that room was so thick it could be cut with a knife. The hot studio lights were nothing compared to the sizzle between Collins and Crockett. CNN's signature set, normally Collins' domain of dominion, had been set up for what the producers thought would be another classic takedown. Behind her well-coiffed desk, in her trademark navy blazer, Collins had the same expression she reserves just before she tearing down somebody's public persona. Each step had been rehearsed. Her producers cued her with possible follow-ups through her earpiece, graphics lined up to display harmful facts, and backup attacks poised in case the initial wave missed. This was CNN's ambush game plan in action, overwhelming preparation to see to it that their anchor never lets go. And yet, seated directly across from her was Jasmine Crockett, a 43-year-old human rights lawyer who became a congresswoman, renowned for her unflinching call-outs of political hypocrisy. She wasn't squirming, she wasn't glistening, and she wasn't shrinking under the glare. She sat there serene. Too serene. The kind of serene that only exists when you're stepping into a trap armed with knowledge the other side can't anticipate. The truth. The red recording light blinked on. Collins struck first. Congresswoman Crockett, she began, voice dripping with polite venom. You've been very vocal about transparency in government, but isn't it true you've been hiding your own financial connections to several controversial donors? It was a surgical strike, swift, practiced, and designed to extract blood. But when Crockett smiled instead of wincing, it was no nervous grin. It was a knowing smile. The kind that says, asterisk, I was waiting for this. Asterisk and hey race where the story really grabs you asterisk to know why what ensued went nuclear online. You need to know precisely who these two women are, and why this confrontation counted. Caitlin Collins had established her reputation on combative journalism. At only 32, she had gone from small-town Alabama journalist to CNN primetime royalty, renowned for her blunt on-camera battles, particularly against the Trump administration. Her technique was bite-sized. Interrupt the guest before their point was fully made, assail with follow-up questions like a prizefighter, and maintain the audience's focus riveted on her mastery of the dialogue. But that evening, her formula failed. And what Jasmine Crockett grabbed from her bag of receipts didn't just stop the attack. It turned the entire interview around and made it something Collins, CNN, and their millions of viewers will never forget. Collins' formula had succeeded every time dozens of times prior to that, from experienced senators to cabinet members. She had a talent for detecting a weakness, homing in on it, and hammering it home until the visitor cracked under the strain. To the right-wing critics, she was the quintessence of everything that was wrong with the mainstream media. To many on the left, she was the uncompromising voice they'd been waiting for since Trump, a reporter who wasn't afraid to say a lie is a lie, in real time, no equivocation. Her battles with the Trump White House had gotten her a household name, with millions of views, and made her CNN's biggest primetime draw. The source, her program, was the network's bid to scrape together relevance in an era where audiences were descending en masse upon streaming platforms and TikTok videos. In that era, viral wasn't merely a bonus, it was salvation. And there was nothing that went viral more quickly than Collins tearing apart a conservative on live television. For her, every combative interview was at once a journalistic obligation and career goldmine. But tonight was not like that. Tonight, she was stepping into a battle she believed she had already won, only to find she had fought the wrong person. Jasmine Crockett was not just a typical freshman congresswoman, and Collins' deadly mistake was underestimating her. Before she'd ever set foot in politics, Crockett had spent over a decade as a civil rights attorney in Dallas, the kind of lawyer who didn't just take tough cases. She won them against impossible odds. Corporations, corrupt officials, entrenched power structures. She had dismantled them all, armed with meticulous preparation and an icy calm that never cracked under pressure. Her most notable fight? Taking down a police department's entrenched civil rights violations. It was brutal, months-long battle with smear tactics, hostile interrogations, and all the intimidation maneuvers at its disposal. But Crockett didn't merely endure. She emerged with a multi-million-dollar payoff and a reputation as the woman you don't want to get up against if you've got something to hide. Her transition into politics wasn't on the spur. She was a fighter for working people. She told it like it was, and she wasn't afraid of anyone. No Republicans, no media, no one. She had already crossed swords with Marjorie Taylor Greene on the floor of the House and emerged victorious, methodically destroying Greene's arguments while the cameras kept rolling. And now she stood in Collins' living room. The stakes were high. Collins was desperate for a viral moment. CNN ratings were hemorrhaging, and the source was struggling to remain on the network's primetime schedule. A scathing critique of an up-and-coming Democrat might be just the jolt of adrenaline that her program needed. For Crockett, this was more than defending herself. It was defending a new generation of Democrats who were done being controlled by the narrative of cable news personalities. If she can beat Collins on Collins' own ground and expose ambush tactics to the world, she would not only win the night, but deliver a personal message to every journalist in America. If you come for me, you'd better be ready. And that's where things got interesting. The Democratic Party was paying attention. Party operatives already viewed Crockett as a star to watch, perhaps even a potential candidate for greater things. But this was the trial by fire. One misstep, one slip in her poise, and she had joined the long list of politicians who crumbled under the harsh light of the media eye. Collins and her producers had made a fatal error. They had not done their research. To them, Jasmine Crockett was simply another freshman congresswoman from Texas, an apparent easy target for a headline-grabbing evisceration. What they did not know was that Crockett had spent her life training for moments just like this, moments when powerful individuals attempted to trap her, only to end up on the back foot. The stage was set for a fight. Old-school ambush reporting against new-school political warfare. And when the battle was over, only one reputation would remain intact. Collins leaned in, her tone growing tighter with each syllable. That familiar hunter's glint in her eye flickered, the one that CNN viewers recognized as warning that she was about to strike. "I'm referring to the $50,000 gift from Marcus Thompson," she informed him, each phrase dripping with accusation. "The real estate developer who's now under federal investigation for tax fraud. You took that money, didn't you?" The studio cameras zoomed in, dividing the frame between the two women's faces. Collins had this moment down to a science after years of practice: the lengthy pause, the icy tone, the manner in which she clutched a stack of papers as though they held earth-shattering information. Her team behind the scenes was already grinning. Graphics had been loaded, captions written up. Texas Democrat caught in dirty money scandal. Now all they needed was Crockett to break. That was the way the game was played: create the scandal first, sanitize the details afterward. But tonight, something was not right. Collins was accustomed to her guests stammering by this point, stumbling over apologies, making them appear guiltier with each passing second. The cameras, the lights, the stress. It was a time-tested formula for breakdown. But Crockett simply sat there, frozen in place. Not a movement, not an eye blink. Rather, she cocked her head ever so slightly, like a prosecutor who had just watched a witness lead themselves into their own trap. Decades in the courtroom had taught her to recognize desperation passing itself off as confidence, and she could see it in Collins' eyes. This wasn't a focused strike. This was a scattershot assault, hoping something would land. "Caitlin," Crockett started, her voice steady but biting, "I appreciate you mentioning campaign contributions. Transparency is such a big subject, don't you agree?" The control room knew in an instant. That wasn't the voice of somebody caught on their heel. That was the voice of somebody leading the discussion. Collins sensed the slightest twinge of discomfort, but her ego kept her frozen. She doubled back. "Don't dodge, Congresswoman. Yes or no? Did you take money from someone being investigated by the federal government?" It was her signature tactic. Ask for a yes or no response to a leading question, then seize on anything less than a direct answer as evasion. The control room crackled with tension, cameras snapping every available angle, social media cutters ready to clip the exchange into a viral soundbite. Yes, indeed I did, said Crockett calmly. Take a donation from Mr. Thompson on March 15, 2023. Would you like to know what I did with those funds? Colin's eyes flashed. She sniffed blood. Please, she said, leaning forward, tell our audience what you did with money from someone the FBI is investigating. Crockett pulled out of her folder a sheet of paper and slid it across the desk. I gave every cent of it to a legal aid society that battles wrongful evictions. I have the receipt right here. The donation was made the same day I received it, something your research team could have learned had they taken longer than 5 minutes to prepare for this interview. For the first time tonight, the mask faltered. A hairline fracture in Colin's confidence formed. She attempted to recover. But you still took the money at first, unlike some individuals in the media, Crockett cut in suavely. I do my homework on the individuals with whom I work. Thompson's inquiry started 3 months subsequent to his gift. Should I have psychic abilities, Caitlin? A ripple of tense laughter bubbled up from the off-camera crew. And in that instant, Collins didn't resemble the hunter at all. She resembled someone who'd entered battle not fully armed. But she still had a few rounds left. Let's discuss your voting record, she stated, leaning forward. You voted against every bipartisan infrastructure bill that has come before Congress. How do you justify voting against projects that benefit your own constituents? This was her fallback strategy. Make a false statement, then make her guest waste valuable airtime refuting it while looking defensive. It was a media gimmick. Crockett didn't even bat an eye. Her smile came back, but this time it was cold as ice. Caitlin, that is utterly untrue, and I believe you're aware of the fact. I cast a yes vote on 7 infrastructure bills this year alone. Would you like me to list them? I have the voting records handy. Collins waved a sheet of paper in front of the cameras. From which bills? Crockett asked. Because I'm looking at your notes, and that page appears to be blank. The camera caught it. Collins frantically scanned the paper, clearly searching for text that wasn't there. She flipped it over, her cheeks flushing as the bluff crumbled in real time. We'll fact-check that after the break, Collins muttered, trying to salvage control. No break necessary, Crockett replied calmly. I have all 7 bills here, along with my yes votes. Would you like me to read them on the air so your viewers can fact-check you live? The studio tension reached a boil. Behind the cameras, Collins' producer was gesturing frantically, but Collins was too deep in to back off. She required a death blow, and she required it immediately. Fine, she spat, her professional veneer cracking. Let's discuss something you can't blow off with paperwork, your inflammatory comments on law enforcement. You referred to police officers as state-sanctioned violence last month. This was the nuclear option, a soundbite crafted to make progressive politicians appear radical and anti-police. Others had caved to this very same attack. But Crockett leaned in, unruffled as always. I'd love to talk about that tweet, Caitlin. Would you read the entire tweet to your audience? Collins paused. You referred to them as state-sanctioned violent. The entire tweet, please, Crockett cut in. That's the pertinent part. No, Caitlin. The entire tweet. You've got it there, don't you? Collins shuffled her papers. We're emphasizing the main phrase. The main phrase plucked out of context, Crockett interrupted. The entire tweet read, asterisk when police officers abuse their power without consequences, it becomes state-sanctioned violence. We must support good officers by holding bad ones accountable. Asterisk, and then she landed the knockout punch. Do you want to tell your audience why you only quoted 4 words from a tweet advocating police accountability? Silence. The whine of studio equipment. Collins was out of spin. Let's move on, Collins weakly said. Let's not, Crockett said. Your audience needs to know why CNN is giving them willfully deceptive information about their elected officials. Is this how you prepare for all your interviews? Collins had been backed into a corner. All of the jabs had been deflected. All of the gotcha questions had been redirected back at her. She was no longer on the question-asking side. She was on the question-seeker side now. Her voice grew strained with frustration. Congresswoman, you can dance around the question all you want, but the American people are sick of politicians who won't answer a direct question. Why won't you simply concede when you're wrong? Crockett's response was quick. Right on, Caitlin. The American people are fed up with individuals who refuse to answer straight questions. So let me get one from you. Why did you inform your viewers that I have opposed infrastructure bills when you knew that was not true? Collins opened her mouth and remained silent. 5 seconds of dead air. An eternity on live TV. I will have to check on those voting records, she eventually stammered. You'll need to confirm them? Crockett's tone held the soft deadliness of a prosecutor striking the knockout blow. Caitlin, you're a reporter. Isn't confirming facts what's supposed to occur prior to making claims, not afterwards? The destruction was precise. Crockett wasn't shouting. She wasn't flustered. She was a surgeon, calmly and precisely dismantling Collins, piece by piece, exposing her as unprofessional and dishonest. And just when everyone thought the storm was over, Crockett reached back into her folder. Since we're talking about transparency, she began, I have something your viewers might find interesting. Collins froze. She could smell the trap, but couldn't find the escape. See this, said Crockett, holding up a piece of paper. This is a copy of your interview with Senator Johnson last month. Remember telling him that real journalists do their homework? Collins' face went white. She knew what was about to hit her. Those were your words, and I quote, Senator, real journalists always do their research. We fact-check before we report. That's what separates us from partisan hacks. Crockett stared directly into the camera. Would you care to inform your audience how tonight's show compares to that standard? Hook. Collins' own words had just become the rope she was hanging from. And Crockett? She was tightening it with each syllable. The knockout was brutal. Collins had been devastated with her own rules, her own standards, and her own strategies, now breaking down against her. The irony was cruel. She had become the same partisan hack she once ridiculed. Collins attempted to pivot. Congresswoman, we invite guests for substantive policy discussions. No, you don't, interrupted Crockett, her tone steady but tempered with holy indignation. You invite guests onto the show to ambush them with deceptive questions and taken out of context quotations. You do not desire meaningful policy. You desire viral videos in which you appear smart and your guest appears stupid. Hook asterisk and the truth bomb. It struck like a meteor at the CNN studio. Crockett hunched forward, handing Collins the punch she never expected. You figured you'd get a stupid freshman congresswoman you could bully. What you got was someone who does her homework, keeps records, and isn't afraid of cable TV bullies. Collins tried to make one final rescue attempt. I think we're getting off track. No, Caitlin, Crockett shot back, voice firm. We're finally on track. Your viewers need to know you spent more time working on deceitful attacks than studying the facts about my record. They need to know you're more interested in gotcha moments than actual journalism. Silence. Complete. Eerie. The studio seemed like a courtroom where the jury had just been delivered the last, crushing closing argument. Collins had nothing, no facts, no comeback, no control. The camera team was paralyzed, watching the unthinkable, their lead anchor disassembled on her home ground. The smirk Collins sported like a shield, erased. Her hands, those usually reliable for those dramatic paper shufflings, were shaking. Producers in the control room were scrambling, speaking the words no network ever wants to hear. Damage control. Hook asterisk the hunter had turned into the hunted, and millions were going to watch it go down. Crockett didn't rub it in. She just sat, poised, as if this was a typical Tuesday. She had battled veteran attorneys in abusive depositions. Collins was old news. And then, with exquisite calm, she spoke the words that would headline tomorrow's papers. I arrived here tonight ready to talk about infrastructure, healthcare, and economic policy, the issues of concern to the American people. You arrived ready to pummel me with lies and cherry-picked quotes. Which one of us do you think actually represents the American people? Collins opened her mouth, and nothing happened. Again, desperation set in. Congresswoman, I think there's some miscommunication. No miscommunication, Crockett answered, still calm. Poor preparation colliding with actual competence. Your audience was worth better research. The letdown in her voice hurt more than any put-down could. Collins resembled a cheating student before the whole class. Her aggressive stance now slumped in defeat. Her confidence was gone. And behind the cameras, her own team looked on in amazement. They'd never seen their anchor so comprehensively outclassed. Finally, Collins was able to get out and say, we have to go into commercial break. Of course you do. Crockett replied with a gracious but deadly smile. Even on break, the situation had been turned around. Collins closeted with frantic producers. Crockett sat going over her notes, as serene as if she'd just finished a meeting, not a live dismembering. When they came back, Collins' demeanor softened. The ambush was finished. The attack dog was muzzled. Questions became respectful, targeted, nearly polite. Within the space of 14 minutes, Crockett had turned one of cable news' toughest interviewers into a modest hostess. She had demonstrated the unstated fact: media bullies are only effective when their prey is unprepared. By the time it was over, Collins was thanking Crockett in a tone that was almost apologetic, rather than a farewell. Hook asterisk the student had taught the teacher. And the moral was clear: asterisk show up ready, or get annihilated. Asterisk the interview concluded. The internet blew up. In short order, the clips went viral everywhere on social media. Millions of people tuned in as Crockett turned the tables, and for the first time in her career, Collins was the headline. For the second time in the interview, Collins stood paralyzed, caught between defending the indefensible and confessing outright professional failure. The CNN studio was less a newsroom, more of a courtroom, with Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett making a closing argument so tight there simply was no possible way to counter. From camera crew to makeup team, everybody knew that they were witnessing something remarkable. This wasn't merely an ill-fated interview. It was a perfect illustration of how preparation, honesty, and cool confidence can take down aggression and manipulation in the moment. Feeling the tension, Collins attempted to backpedal. "Congresswoman, I think there may be some misunderstanding here," she ventured, her voice shaking. But Crockett wouldn't let her escape. "No misunderstanding," she retorted smoothly. "Only shoddy preparation and countering real competence. Your audience was better served by research. Now they've witnessed the contrast between someone who did her homework and someone who depends on drama." The words were delivered like a surgical blow, accurate, debilitating, and impossible to counter. She wasn't upset. She wasn't indignant. She was merely disappointed. And in some way, that stung worse than any yelling battle could have. Thereafter, the loss was apparent. Collins' previous aggressive stance disintegrated into defensive doldrums. Her piercing interruptions became tentative turns. Even her signature smirk was gone, replaced by a touch of embarrassment, on the verge of shame. In the studio, CNN personnel shared muted glances. They had watched Collins bludgeon countless politicians into submission before, but never had they witnessed one she seemed so completely outclassed. Back in the control room, her executive producer was already contemplating damage control. How do you tell the network that your top anchor has just been taken apart by a freshman congresswoman? And on her own show, the irony was cruel. Collins had built a career exposing unprepared politicians. Tonight, she had been the one caught off guard, and she'd been exposed for all to witness. But the real bombshell erupted after the interview was complete. In minutes, excerpts started pouring onto social media. Hashtags such as #CrockettDestroysCNN trended. Audiences from all political corners were tweeting the most shocking moments. The empty pages, the fact-checking flip-flops, the stunned silence. Progressive activists were declaring Crockett the warrior they'd been looking for. Conservative pundits, typically CNN's most scathing critics, were unexpectedly praising a Democrat for revealing what they perceived as outright media bias. One of the viral posts flew through Twitter, a side-by-side split-screen video of Collins' assertive pre-show promo tweet, ready to ask the tough questions tonight, alongside her sitting in stunned silence after Crockett corrected her. It was a brutal contrast, and it became meme material in an instant. YouTube compilations appeared within hours. Titles such as "CNN host gets wrecked by facts" reached hundreds of thousands of views by dawn. Late-night television shows also got in on it. Trevor Noah's staff created a bit of "When Keeping It Real Goes Wrong," and Saturday Night Live already began working on a parody sketch before the end of the day, according to reports. Even journalists joined in. Columbia Journalism School professor Sarah Martinez tweeted, "This is how not to do an interview. Lying isn't journalism. It's performance." The post garnered thousands of likes. Another trending tweet wrapped it up. Jasmine Crockett just taught every politician a masterclass: bring receipts, remain calm, and turn their tactics around on them. Brilliant. Within CNN, the atmosphere was charged. Some apologetically defended Collins, claiming she had been ambushed by an exceptionally well-prepared guest. Others conceded it was a classic example of sloppy preparation. Whatever explanation they tried to offer, however, the entire interview was available online. The public could witness firsthand what had transpired. And in the public court of opinion, the judgment was already in. Jasmine Crockett had entered CNN's home and taken over. All right, I've gone through your script. I can put the entire thing back together in a tighter, edgier voice and include natural viewer hooks between shots so that it is held by an audience from beginning to end. Before rewriting, could you just clarify? Are you after me putting both chunks sent up to now together into one smooth, flowing script with all hooks included? That way, it feels like one uninterrupted viral YouTube commentary piece.